In the day's other news, Wall Street went into meltdown mode again as tech stocks took their worst beating in 7 years. It came as Apple warned of slowing sales in China, adding to existing concerns about the Chinese economy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 660 points to close at 22,686. The Nasdaq fell 202 and the S&P 500 dropped 62. Trade tensions with China also contributed to the sell-off, but White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said that Beijing's economic worries will pressure it to reach a deal.
Make no mistake, the Chinese economy is on a path that we haven't seen in decades, and that's something that will affect companies that operate in China. And so there's a lot of room for positive gain in the Chinese negotiations. And I think the fact that their economy is having trouble right now shows that our policies have been effective at getting them to the table.
Hassett said that China's economy is now facing, quote, what for them might be called a recession. We'll get some insight into all of this after the news summary. The U.S. State Department is again warning Americans in China to use increased caution. An updated advisory today says Chinese authorities have arbitrarily barred people from leaving the country with so-called exit bans. All of this follows the arrest of a Chinese tech executive in Canada last month. China then detained 2 Canadians. In Saudi Arabia, prosecutors announced today that they will seek the death penalty for 5 men accused in the killing of journalist and dissident Jamal Khashoggi. They were among 11 suspects who had an initial court hearing. Khashoggi was murdered at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul last October. A special tribunal in Afghanistan has convicted 3 men of murdering journalist Ahmad Shah. He worked for the BBC and Reuters and was shot dead in Host province last April. In all, 15 journalists were killed in Afghanistan last year. That is the most in any country. Police in southern India arrested hundreds of protesters today after 2 women entered a Hindu temple in defiance of an ancient ban. Demonstrators from conservative Hindu groups marched, clashed with officers, and burned effigies. The protest shut down much of Kerala state. Last September, India's Supreme Court lifted the ban on women accessing the temple. And in a lunar first, China says it landed an unmanned space probe on the far side of the moon today. Over the years, the U.S., the former Soviet Union, and China have sent spacecraft to the moon's surface, but always on the near side. We'll have a closer look later in the program. Also ahead on the NewsHour, market volatility following Apple's warning of slumping iPhone sales. The Secretary of State demands the immediate release of an American charged with espionage in Russia. Making sense of the rise in popularity of socialism among a new generation of Americans, and much more.